Our text this week comes from St. Matthew, chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. Then saith he to the man, Stretch forth thine hand. And he stretched it forth, and it was restored whole, like as the other. Then the Pharisees went out and held a council against him, how they might destroy him. But when Jesus knew it, he withdrew himself from thence. And great multitudes followed him, and he healed them all, and charged them that they should not make him known, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Esaias the prophet, saying, Behold my servant, whom I have chosen, my beloved, in whom my soul is well pleased. I will put my Spirit upon him, and he shall show judgment to the Gentiles. He shall not strive, nor cry, neither shall any man hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed shall he not break, and smoking flax shall he not quench, till he send forth judgment unto victory. And in his name shall the Gentiles trust. We also read about this in St. Mark chapter 3, verses 6 through 15. And the Pharisees went forth and straightway took counsel with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. But Jesus withdrew himself with his disciples to the sea. And a great multitude from Galilee followed him, and from Judea, and from Jerusalem, and from Idumea, and from beyond Jordan, and they about Tyre and Sidon, a great multitude, when they had heard what great things he did, came unto him. And he spake to his disciples, that a small ship should wait on him because of the multitude, lest they should throng him. For he had healed many, insomuch that they pressed upon him for to touch him, as many as had plagues. And unclean spirits, when they saw him, fell down before him, and cried, saying, Thou art the Son of God. And he straitly charged them that they should not make him known. And he goeth up into a mountain, and calleth unto him whom he would. And they came unto him. And he ordained 12, that they should be with him, and that he might send them forth to preach, and to have power to heal sicknesses, and to cast out devils. Lastly, we read from St. Luke's Gospel, chapter 6, verses 12 through 16. And it came to pass in those days that he went out into a mountain to pray, and continued all night in prayer to God. And when it was day, he called unto him his disciples, and of them he chose 12, whom also he named apostles, Simon, whom he also named Peter, and Andrew his brother James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon called Zelotes, and Judas the brother of James, and Judas Iscariot, which also was the traitor. In St. Matthew 12:15, Jesus knew that the Jews were plotting with the Herodians to kill him. For that reason, he left the synagogue, probably in Capernaum, and went into the mountains. We were told about that in St. Mark 3:13 and St. Luke 6:12. But on his way to the mountains, not only to avoid the Jews who were out to kill him, but also to spend the night in prayer before calling out the 12, Luke 6:12, the multitudes followed him and pressed for his attention and blessings. Again, we remind you that time and history are real, and Jesus knew it as well as any man. He knew that it was not yet his time to be taken. Even so, he also knew that if he was not going to be taken at this time, he needed to put some distance between himself and the Jews. But he would not allow concerns about his own safety cause him to ignore the ministry and the needs of others. Many times, those of us in the ministry, and all Christians for that matter, face these kinds of conflicts. We have our spiritual duties and our personal needs and responsibilities to ourselves and our families. Anyone who says that this is an easy matter with which he has no difficulty knows something that I do not. We do not want to be ruled over by money, but we must pay the gas company and the electricity company, or our families will be sitting in the dark with no hot water and no way to cook the food. We do not want to be faithless, but if we do not have insurance to cover things if something happens to us, those who come after us will have a mess on their hands. And so it goes. We will talk much more about this when we come to the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes very shortly now. But one simple rule provides the broad beam of light to follow. We are here to serve, not to be served. And if we evade our spiritual duties in the enterprise of taking care of our physical needs, then what good will it do us to survive? Ultimately, of course, we will not survive. Only what we have done in faith for Christ will have any meaning in the world to follow. Jesus was under some pressure to get away from those Jews and Herodians, or so Saint Matthew 12:15 seems to me to say. But when Jesus knew it, he withdrew himself from thence. But life around him did not stop while he attended to his own needs of the moment. Verse 15 continues, great multitudes followed him. Jesus stopped his journey to the mountain long enough to meet their needs, all of their needs. Verse 15 concludes saying, and he healed them all. This was no short delay. It took time to discover the physical needs of that multitude of people and to deal with those needs. How long? Well, we are not told, but it must have taken days, perhaps. This was a multitude, thousands of people. But could not the great incarnate God simply have stretched out his hand over the crowd and healed them all at once, virtually on the move? He could have, of course, and he may have, but this would not seem to me to be the nature of the narrative, nor is it the example of what has just taken place at Bethesda and the synagogue. Individual attention is indicated here, to me at least. If that is the case, could this delay not have jeopardized his life and thereby his mission? Was it wise to allow them to hold him up in this rather urgent matter? Now, these are questions that are not so simply answered. Sometimes it would not have been wise for him, and at other times it would have been. So it is with us. There is a principle to justify leaving the masses standing in anticipation and moving on. Jesus did that a short while back when he became concerned about the growing praise and adulation that was surrounding him. But then there are times when one must ignore the dangers and do the thing that is before him, trusting God to take care of him when doing that places him in danger of one sort or another. There's a saying in the Bible that makes the point I am reaching for. It notes on more than one occasion that the Jews could not do anything to him because his time had not yet come. Now, do not jump to conclusions. This does not mean that Jesus just stood there and let them take their shots at him. On those very occasions where it is noted that they could not harm him because his time had not yet come, it is also recorded that he hid himself from them. He went out of their midst, or he took his disciples and went into a solitary place. Jesus has already faced the false crisis of fearing that any move toward self-preservation is a lack of faith when he told the devil that God would indeed send angels to protect him, but that he was not to tempt God. But in this case, it was not tempting God. There were needy people, subjects the kingdom of Israel, over which he had come as king. It is true that they ultimately rejected both his kingship and his kingdom, but that did not relieve him of his responsibilities to them. He must not let his concerns about the schemes of the Jews cause him to lose the vision of why he had come to the nation. No, his mission as king of the Jews was not his most important mission in this world, but it was an important mission, and he must not let fear about personal safety cause him to fail in those duties. Fresh in Jesus' mind was the time in St. Luke 5:16, when he had left this very multitude and went into a desert place to pray, because he feared his growing fame that was developing as a result of his miraculous healing of the people. Here, Jesus is still concerned about that very thing. He heals them because he has compassion, but he pleads with them not to start the celebrity and hero movement all over again. In this day and age, when it seems that the whole world of Christendom is obsessed with one-up's manship, when men are using the church and the religious movements to make comments about their own imagined greatness and to get rich, it is difficult to take seriously Jesus' uneasiness about fame and recognition. It may be true that it is, from time to time, God's will and purpose to give honor to certain persons, but that must never be our motive for what we do in the religious world. If it is, you may be sure it will corrupt us and go wrong for us before it is all done, and it must always be our goal to bring honor and glory to Christ and not to ourselves. I once stood at the pulpit of the church of my old pastor, J. Paul Miller. It was the church in which I had been raised and from which I had branched out into my own ministry quite a number of years before. As I was preparing to address his congregation, I looked down at two little signs he had pasted in constant view. One of them said, "I must decrease so that he can increase." The other said, "No man can honor himself and God at the same time." Matthew 12:16 says, "And charge them that they should not make him known." This was the proper expression of true selflessness and humility by the holiest of all men who have ever walked this earth. But it was more. It was the fulfillment of yet another of the prophecies foretelling the signs of his messiahship that he would manifest to the nation and to the world.
This article from God's Point of View was an original text authored by Reverend D. Earl Cripe and has been read by an AI voice clone. For more information, check the links in the info section below. Read more at godspointofview.com. A copy of this book is available from Amazon in Kindle and paperback format. Link in the description.